Hi everyone, welcome to the second video of the onboarding series. This video I'll be showing you how to create a typical work order. So the bread and butter really of maintenance connection and what we use maintenance connection for. So I'll take you through a typical work order from start to finish. There are two different ways to do this, or certainly two different options to do this. One is using MC Express, which is the primary version of MC that I'll be showing you. And then we also have the full desktop version of MC as well, which many people will be familiar with. It's something that a legacy system that we've used at Gap for a long time now. But both ways pretty much are the same. The only differences are maybe user interface and some visuals, but the process pretty much is exactly the same, whichever system you use. For the purposes of this video, I will be using MC Express because that's typically the version that we prefer to use because it makes it a lot easier on a mobile device. So if you're using MC Express, you'll probably be using the TC52. So that's super easy. That's simply clicking the icon that's available to you on the TC52 and opening MC Express. If you're using a desktop, then again, as I said in the previous video, it's a web-based application. So we just typically need to access that web-based application through a normal browser. You can use Edge, you can use Chrome, Safari, Firefox, any of those will do. I will use Microsoft Edge, and I recommend that you create a shortcut for MC and MC Express on your desktop. It makes things a lot easier instead of having to go to your browser, type in the URL, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm going to type in express.mc or maintenanceconnection.com. Again, I would add that as a shortcut. Now, at this point, you should have signed up for Maintenance Connection already. If you've not done that, then check out the first video of this series. That will take you through that whole process. Well, I've signed up, I've been approved, I now have my login credentials, and that again is used for both MC Express and the desktop version of MC as well. So I could type them in, the system will remember them for me, hopefully, and I can just click login, and then I'm greeted by a home screen. Now, your home screen may look different to mine. It's dependent on many things, different levels or different roles have certain access requirements. So if you're a system admin, you may see a lot more than you would if you were a technician or a parts clerk or a supervisor, manager, etc. Everyone has different access. So the things I'm going to show today, though, everybody will have access to this. Technicians, obviously, that's the kind of the main role that will be creating work orders usually, but supervisors may create them, managers, parts clerks as well. But everybody will have access to work orders. So you may see some of these options, you may not, but pretty much everyone will see some kind of work order detail. And you can see there the home screens kind of says work orders, I've got some assets and I've got some inventory. Again, the full system slightly different to this, but still similar. And you still get access to work orders, you still get access to assets, you still get access to inventory, possibly more in the full system. But MC Express is meant to be streamlined, more user-friendly in terms of using a mobile device, so definitely recommend this. It's a lot easier to follow. You can create a work order by clicking. I'm just going to show you quickly before I get to create a work order. If you ever want to return back to a home screen, you could just click the Gap Global Supply Chain banner at the top, the blue banner, and that will always take you back home. So with Maintenance Connection, you'll probably find yourself clicking on various different things, and you may be going through to assets from a work order, go through to inventory. And obviously you've got the back button to select, which you'll see it shortly, but you can sometimes get down a path almost through clicking various things and maybe not realize how you can get back to the home screen easily. And that is simply clicking the blue banner at the top, and that will always take you back to the home screen. You get a number of options as well up here. You can change your language and various other things, some of your settings, and that's there as well. And then just obviously I click these three lines, this small box up here. You do get an option here to global search. Now this will search, if you put anything in there, now you can scan a barcode in there, or you can type in a portion of an asset ID, a part ID, a work order ID, a name, anything. If you put anything in this box, if it's in maintenance connection in some form, it could be an ID, it could be a name, it could be a vendor ID, it will search that string, whatever you've put in. So I could put in motor, for example, hit enter, or I could, type it in or scan it, and then you can see pretty generic, obviously pretty generic thing to put in. So I'm getting a lot of options, but you can see that there's over 1,500 parts with the referencing motor. There's over 1,500 assets that are referenced to a motor. So that means that we've used a motor on those assets. And then there's currently 82 open work orders, so significantly less work orders. That's because they're open work orders. I've obviously closed work orders out. I'll show you a bit more of that down the line. And there's 82 work orders currently in the system that are referencing a motor. So you can see how powerful that global search is. You probably need to be a bit more specific than motor, but certainly if you search an ID, a TGW number, a Dematic number, if you're looking for a part, you're looking for a work order that's used that part, that kind of thing. And that is a very, very powerful tool. So I just wanted to show you that if you're ever looking for a work order, or if you're ever looking for something like that, then that is a really powerful tool. Anyway, this video is primarily going to be creating a work order. So I will show you how to do that now. Now, most work orders you will get are probably going to be work orders that already exist. They may be follow-up, they may be a service request, a PM, and they can all be accessed through these things. And if they're assigned to you, then they'll show up in my open work orders there. And then you would just simply click that and you would have access to that. But I'm going to create a work order. So this is something that usually reserved for emergency or maybe routine. A work order that's created after the fact. Now, not always, but usually that is the case. So you've gone out, you've attended the radio call, piece of machinery or some equipment or an asset is in need of repair. You've got that radio call from operations. You've gone out. Obviously, you've not hung around. You've waited. You've gone and done it as an emergency work. You've completed that task, and now you need to enter your time, maybe some parts that have been used, some detail, problem codes, all that kind of good stuff. So we can accurately record what took place, what's taken place, what parts we've used. Get all that data and all that information gathered into MC, so we can improve and maybe iron out these issues or work out which assets are costing us the most money, or where we're having the most downtime in the business, all that kind of stuff. It's what we use CMMS systems for. So it's super important that you're as accurate as possible in all those things I've just spoken about: downtime, your hours, which can usually be different, the parts that have been used, the asset it's been against, all that stuff. So let's go through that now. So that would be just selecting that down arrow there, creating a work order, and then you have a screen like this. Now, just a number of fields that need populating. You'll see some fields, some of these boxes here are highlighted with a blue perimeter, a blue border. That means that those fields are required. So you cannot save. You get the option to save this work order. It will not let you save a work order if those fields do not have something in there. So they have to be populated. All of our fields do not have to be populated. However, we do have some standards in place, some standardized processes, and we do require some fields depending on the work type, and we'll get a bit more into that in a second. But depending on the work type, we do require some fields to be populated. So request information or work order comments. Basically, what was the request? What was the job? Again, this is creating a work order. I'm using it from the perspective of being after the work's been done. So this possibly be past tense, but it doesn't really matter as long as there's enough detail in there this is the most visible field in a work order as well. So there's enough detail to kind of briefly explain what was going on or what the job was. And that could be something like maybe belt join needed repair. I mean, the idea is to be as descriptive as possible without being overly descriptive, and it's trying to find that balance, I would say. Obviously, MC Express, you're going to be using a mobile device or a handheld or a tablet or something like that. Your TC52 ideally is ever TC52. And if you're on a desktop, obviously it's easier to be a bit more descriptive and type War and Peace, for example. But I wouldn't recommend that at all. And so it's kind of being informing the supervisor and the leadership team and what the issue was without going completely over the top and sitting there for hours and hours and typing in what the job was. So belt joint needed repair, pretty brief, gets straight to the point. It could be any motor needed replacing, electrical fault on something, something that kind of tells you what the job is. That's the most visible field, and there it is. Then we get to select the asset. Now you could put the cursor in here, and you can actually scan it. If your asset is barcoded or QR coded even, you can actually just put the cursor and use the TC52 to scan that barcode, and it would put that asset in there for you automatically. You could either click on the spyglass as well, find the asset. You could actually search. You could actually just start typing P100, for example. You can see I can find the asset as well. So we've got a few P1000s across the network. We've got one at PFC, we've got one at ODC, we've got one at OHO. If you're at, I've got access to all the sites, so that's why you're seeing all these ones. If you're based at ODC, you'll only see ODC P1000. If you're based at OHO, you'd only see that one. So you only see the assets that are associated to your repair center or site or repair centers if you're at a multi-site campus. So you could type it in. I've not typed in the whole asset ID and it's already found it. So it's really, again, a bit like the global search. Type in a portion of the asset ID and it will find it. So pretty cool way to find it. Again, scanning is probably the quickest way. You will just simply put the cursor in there and scan. If you don't know what the asset ID is, if you haven't got if you're not by the asset, you can't scan that asset, you can actually click the spyglass as well. And it will hopefully, and then you greeted with this asset tree and you can actually drill down. So again, I've got access to all the sites, but let's say I'm based at the Gallatin campus. I can click on these down arrows and I'm actually working through an asset hierarchy and I'm locating an asset. So material handling equipment, I was over at the shipping area, so shipping outbound. All of these asset hierarchies should be very similar. They're all standardized aligned. So wherever you are in the network, they should all look something similar to this. Shipping sorters. And I was working on crossbelt sorter CB1. So I would select that as my asset. And there we go. The asset is in SCD CB01. I could have just typed that in, or I could have just scanned that in. I know it would have been a lot quicker, but obviously, if you haven't got that information, that's the way to do it. So multiple ways to do everything. I'm going to come back to failure class and problem code in a moment. Assigned to you, we can leave that as well. Again, a lot of these options you won't see in your version, depending on your access as well. Procedure we can ignore for now. Target date again, estimated labor hours. I'm ignoring all of this. And the reason for that is because, again, I'm from the scenario of creating a work order after the fact. So if it is an emergency work order, the target date would be that day. I've done that. I've just done the work order. I'm now filling it out, that work order. So the target date is today's date, and that's what it defaults to. So that's fine. So I could just leave it like that. The estimated labor hours, there's no estimate. We only use estimated labor hours for planned work. So again, if this was a follow-up work order, then target date and estimated work or estimated labor hours would be populated with something. So I'll get onto that later on down the series. But again, a follow-up work order or planned work, you create a work order in advance. You found something that's going to fail, and we need to plan that in and repair it. Those fields would be required to be populated. Now, this is from the perspective of an emergency work order. So in this case, we do not need to fill those out. Priority, again, the same. So you can see how easy this is to create a work order that's for emergency. A lot of these fields do not need to be populated. Priority is the same. We've got actually multiple options for priority. 1, 2, 3 are usually the priorities that we use. obviously says 0, so it's an emergency, and that's exactly what it was. Again, if it was a follow-up work order, I would prioritize that, 1 being high, 2 being medium, 3 being low. So, and then, I mean, if I click on priority there, just like that there, you can see I've got those options there. So I just select that priority. So I'm going to select emergency because I'm just going to leave it as default because it was an emergency work order, but that could be changed. Shutdown required. No. We don't need shutdown required. Yes, actually, apologies. Lockout, tag out. Yes, I locked and tagged out. Again, that's reserved for mostly for planned work. So I'm just indicating those that I did lock it out and I did shut it down. But usually that is required. You know, when you're creating follow-up work order, you're letting the leadership team know that lockout, tag out is required and shutdown is required, and that means that that's an indicator then to the leadership team that they may need to plan that in with operations. Again, you'll see a lot of fields here that you won't see. I've got access to everything, so it'll be a lot cleaner when the version you see. So the main thing really is your asset, selecting the right asset and not, you know, not a parent asset. So we have 2 different types of assets, parents and children. Your main parent, the main node would be the repair center you're at, and then everything else under that would be children. But you want to drill down to the specific asset as you can, if possible, you get to that specific asset. That's the idea of it. So that's not always the case. You may not always be able to do that. If you've been working on a group of assets, for example, the expectation wouldn't be to create an individual work order for every single little asset. If you've worked on a group of assets for a particularly short space of time, that may be the case, but that could be an option to select a parent asset instead. So, but usually 99% of the time, it will be selecting that specific asset. Okay, I am going to put in a problem code here. So problem codes are required for an emergency work order. I actually didn't tell you the work type actually, so let me just put that is a required field. So let's go back to the work type first. This is a super important field. And I could actually just type in EM and then you can see it's like an emergency maintenance. That came up. I know it's emergency maintenance, I know it's EM, but there's loads of different types of work orders, and it's important that you know which types to use. And there's a really good write-up in the MC playbook. If you haven't got that, reach out to your supervisor, manager, or myself at chris_ramsdale@gap.com. I can get that that playbook to you guys. I will also put a link in the description below, or a write-up in the description below of what work types are. It's important that you have this somewhere in the office. Even, you know, it's a small printout, a small A4 printout. It will show every work type and what those work types are typically used for. It gives you some examples as well. It's a really good document, and if you're new to the business or just new to Maintenance Connection and getting used to all these work types, I would say it's important that you learn these and understand these, because these are very, very important for our reports. And when we're gathering data, we look at, you know, how much emergency we've got, what's a safety, what's a service request. Some of them are obvious, you know, training's obvious, emergency is pretty obvious, to be honest. But I would definitely recommend that you read up on that side of, if you're creating work orders regularly, you read up on that particular part of the playbook and get familiar with what work types to use. So I'm going to select emergency on this. It could be, you know, it could be a routine that's not this type of work order because I'm repairing something, but that's another example. Routine is another example of a reactive work order type. This is emergency, and the reason I've selected emergency is because I've used, we call it tool time. I've actually used tools. I've, you know, broken out some tools to repair this, and it's something that a maintenance technician would be required to do. So it's direct work. We have indirect and direct work. Again, that is all in the playbook. I won't take up the video going over that. That is all in the playbook. But basically, direct work means it's tool times been used. So I broke out some spanners. I've got some Allen wrenches out, whatever it may be. And I've had to repair an asset. So that means it's an emergency. And at the point of failure as well. So that means it is an emergency work order. So my work type there is emergency. You can see that is a required field, and it's typically not populated either. So you need to sort of select a work type. Now, this is pretty much done except for the problem code. Problem code is really important for emergency, and that's the reason for that is because we gather data. We're looking at what problems we've had against a particular type of asset. It's actually using a filter on here because it's saying that cell carrier is related. It's something that's typically used on this asset. It's a cross-belt sorter, so it's saying cell carrier it could be, but there are multiple options to select here. Just going to show you how to show all of them really, because it may not be specifically cell carrier. So there's a drop down box up here. I click on that, and then you can see show all. It's saying link to asset. So this is actually something that's been used on this asset previously. So it's defaulted to that. If you're not seeing all the problem codes, click show all. Just click that drop box, click show all, and then you'll get all options. And you can see loads of different options. I think I said belt joint, didn't I? So what I will look for is, yeah, I would say it is a cell carrier because I'm going to say it's a cell carrier. It has a belt on there. Problem codes can be sometimes a bit difficult to select. Sometimes, well, most of the time, it's pretty obvious. You know, the belt option there. In fact, that's the one to select, isn't it? So I'm going to select belt, but sometimes it could be a couple of things. I would say just be as accurate as possible. You're not always going to get it perfectly right. Like you say, you could get a couple of options, choosing the best option. So if I was to select cell carrier, if the belt is on the cell carrier, it could be the cell carrier. But I did mention in the brief job description I put in, it is the belt. So I'm going to select belt. As long as it's as accurate as possible, and you'll do your best to really be diligent and select the right problem code, you're not going to go too far wrong. Sometimes that maybe a problem code doesn't quite fit, and in this case I've got multiple options. Sometimes maybe there isn't something that's completely obvious, so you kind of you try and select the one that is most appropriate to the problem you had. Like I say, sometimes it's not always obvious, but I think there's a lot of problem codes to select now, and usually it's very rare that it is difficult. But if you're always getting a problem on a particular asset and it's coming up quite often, then just reach out to your supervisor, explain to them, I'm getting this issue. They might be able to show you which one we typically use. You can always reach out to me as well, and I'll be able to help you out with that as well. So I'm going to select belt, and it should just put that in there. Belt, yep, you can see there. Again, I could just actually type that in if I wanted to, and it will put it in there as well. So loads of different ways to populate your fields, but that's pretty much it. I mean, I went around the houses a bit there, obviously, but really, job description, select the asset, you put your problem code in, you put your work type in, which is emergency. Everything else is either auto-populated, or you don't need to fill out for a reactive work order. Now I can save this work order. Now, I've saved the work order. Again, I have created this work order after the fact. So this is an emergency work order. So really, there's nothing stopping me from, I've created the work order now that the work order is there for me to start entering the required information. Actuals, we call them. So I can add some parts, I can add my labor, and I could pretty much complete and close out this work order for review by my supervisor. And that's it. And it can be done with. It doesn't have to be assigned, it doesn't have to be planned out. Work orders after the fact do not have to be assigned. I just want to make that clear. They do not have to be assigned. As long as you've got your hours in against it, that's all you need. We don't need to be assigning work orders to ourselves or to anybody else, unless it is a planned work order. And the only people that should be assigning work orders are supervisors or managers. They're the only people that need to assign work orders most of the time. Obviously, there's some allowances there, but Most of the time, it's going to be a supervisor or manager. Now, I've saved my work order. Belt joint needs repair. We can see what the issue is. Got lockout and shutdown required. I mean, that's really why you don't need to put that in for a work order after the fact. But that's more of an indicator for a supervisor to say, okay, I need to plan this in. So, there's no tasks in there. You can see task 0. Don't need to put any tasks in there. Don't need to put a detailed method statement on what took place and what I did. The idea is to be quick as possible, get it done, and get it out there and get it closed off. Assignments, I don't need to assign this work order, as I've said before. Again, planned work order may be slightly different, but the only people who should be worried about that are supervisors and managers. Labor, parts, attachments, and then we've got asset history there. The 4 more options now. Asset history, really good tab. Again, I don't need, but you can have a look. If you are creating a follow-up work order, you can have a look at asset history and see if that work order already exists. But again, this is an emergency work order. The work's been done. Don't need to look at that. So really, the only 3 things I'm worried about are labor, parts, and attachments. So let's go to labor first. I can click on labor. And it says there are no labor records for this work order. So I can actually add my time in just by clicking on the plus sign at the top. Also populates with the current user, which is me. That's my name. And it is as simple as putting in, simple as putting in your time. And we use quarter-hour decimal increments. So what I mean by that is 0.25 for 15 minutes, 0.5 for half an hour, 0.75 for 45 minutes, 1 hour. You get the idea. 1.25. So be as accurate as possible. Quarter-hour increments is fine. So in this case, it was a belt joint. I took the radio call, and then quickly attended the job. So I got down there, got my cherry picker, drove it down, signed the cherry picker out, got over there, repaired the belt quickly. It was just a lacing pin, put the new lacing pin in, just cleaned everything up quickly, drove the cherry picker back. You can see how this is from start to finish. It's not just the repair that took place. This is from the start, at the moment I've took that job, started making my way towards the asset to repair it, right the way to when I've come back, cleaned up, and finished the job. So it's not just, this isn't downtime. This is how many hours has it taken you to complete this work order, start to finish. So very different to downtime. So what I'm trying to say is this could have taken me an hour to, from the moment of I'm putting 1 in there for 1 hour, from the moment of taking the call to getting back to the workshop, putting the cherry picker up or the scissor lift up, all that kind of stuff. Could have took me an hour, but the downtime really, by the time I got there, repaired it very quickly. That could have only been 45 minutes, maybe half an hour. So they're 2 different. You got clock hours and you got downtime hours, labor hours, downtime hours, whatever you refer it to as. Assignment complete. I mean, everything else could be a date. Obviously, today's date. It's important. I'm recalling it after the fact, but I did it today. If it was a last-minute job on the previous shift, then obviously that needs to be changed. So maybe you stayed over to repair something quickly on your yesterday's shift or last night's shift, whatever it may have been. And then you've come in first thing in the morning. Obviously, the preference would be to record that on the day, and so it's in there and it's done. But there are occasions when and you're pushing into overtime, that kind of thing. You may just want to get home once you big job and you get home. Then the very next morning, that at the latest, the very next shift you're in, then you need to fill that in, or you should put some contingencies in there to fill it in. But ideally, it's a very quick process to do this. So ideally, 99% of the time you'll be doing this on the day of the work took place. So again, that date field doesn't need to be edited usually. I can click save, and then my hours are in there. Now you can actually add somebody else's time in there, their username. So I could probably put in someone like, will it find them if I put in? So yeah, I can actually type them in as well. So I'm getting loads of different, I don't know how it's come up, but if you know their user, there you go. finally, so got there in the end. So I could put in another technician. If you know their username, it's super easy. If you know the name, obviously start typing it in, it will find them. Really powerful tool. You can actually just click on labor as well and locate them, exactly as we did on the assets previously. So I can actually find somebody to add, and you can add their hours in as well. If you know there's a couple of technicians, 2 or 3 technicians, that's all, you could do that as well. So I'm going to go back to the work order. If you actually click on the grey banner, that will take you back to the work order. And you can see labor, there's 1 record. My record, 1 hour. Now, that is adding hours after the fact. There is a really powerful tool that can accurately add your hours in. And it's this here, start timer. Now, I will show that on the next video a bit more, but the timer is really cool. If this was a work order that you created before the job, so that would be ideal. If you say you got the call for this job, you could actually, and you know it's a belt that's broke, you can actually quickly create this work order and click start timer. Now, this is mostly for follow-up PMs, assigned work, because there will be work orders that are already assigned to you, and you go out and do them, and you can start that timer. So I'll go more into detail on that on the next video. But start timer is a really cool option. I recommend everybody uses that if it's feasible to use it, because that way the whole process I just took you through is done automatically. You just click start timer, the timer starts on the work order. You go and do the work order, do what you need to do, go do the job, finish up, click start timer, and then your hours are added in automatically, and really accurately as well. So you don't have to remember how long it took you or that kind of thing. You don't have to go through this whole process. It skips all that, and so start timer, really cool function. Parts. So again, labor, actuals, labor and parts, they're your actuals. They're the key things I need to put in. So parts, no part records, again, exactly the same process, but in this case, I need to find the parts. So I just click on the add. I'm just going to select some crossed off because that's the site I'm at. So you get the option to select whichever storeroom it's in. So I can select the main, if it's in the crane storeroom. So I select main, and again, you can actually let's just see, something comes up. Nothing comes up there, but you can actually just start typing something in, like let's type in bearing, for example, and you can see I'm getting options straight away. So as soon as you start typing in, the system will start looking or predicting what you're typing in, and if it's been used on that asset previously, it goes to that, prioritizes that. So the more history, that's why it's very important that we have parts and we're accurate with that, because the more history we get, the more data we get, the more easier it gets for us in the future, because we're able to easily pick out those parts that are being used. Even easier would be to scan, click in that cursor and scan the barcode of the part that you use. So if your, or the QR code, sorry. So if your location, your bin location has a part number, and that is what you want to just scan that, and then it's done. Dead easy. Puts in that part ID, and you can add that part. Or third option, again, exactly the same. You can actually just try and search it. So you can search bin location. You can search for the vendor part number. So if you know what the TGW number is, so let's just, here's one I've got earlier. A TGW number doesn't actually find it. That means it's not in this stock room. So it's probably a TGW number, it exists, but we don't actually have it at this stock room. So if you know the part ID, remove that. So I am going to select, for the purpose of this video, to make things easier, I'm going to select this O-ring. Now I know it's not a belt joint, ideally. So it'll be quick, show you how it works. I'm not actually going to save this part, but you can see it's got a cost on there, and really I'm just selecting the part and how many I used of this part. That's it. I used 2. I click save, and then it would add those 2 parts to my work order. I'm going to click cancel, and then I'm going to go back to the work order. I don't want to book any parts out for the purpose of this video. So labor and parts, there are 2 main important things. Attachments, no attachments for this work order at the moment, but you can upload an image or a document if you want to. And that, if you're on a handheld device, that's even easier. You actually get the option to take a photo. So if you take a photo, so if you've got a native camera on your device, then you get another option. Obviously, I'm using the desktop, so it's not giving me that option, but you just click take photo, and you can take a photo as well. makes things a lot easier. Very good, again, for follow-up work and PMs, this particular one, but it can be used for emergencies as well. But if you found a problem on a follow-up or a PM, taking a photo, a lot easier than typing out exactly what the problem is, a lot quicker. So attachments for other types of work orders as well. So really, labour parts, and now the work order is pretty much done. I can click on the checkered flag there. That's kind of telling the system I want to finish the work order. I'm going to show, you can see it says close there. Generally, most people already have access to complete. And the idea is that we complete a work order and then it's audited and closed out by the supervisor or the manager. That's the whole idea of it. So technicians, if you're a parts clerk as well, it's the same, but you would be able to complete a work order, and that's as far as you can take it. You can actually set it responded as well. You could actually, if you want to, how complete this work order is. So maybe it's only 75% complete, and that's just an indicator to the supervisor to reassign it. I would always still send a note to the supervisor as well, if that is the case. You're saying, started this work order, not been able to complete it, but this is the work order ID. Just put that extra work in. They may not always see that. So if you are selecting responded, definitely just send a note out to the supervisor as well. Usually it's going to be completed. And then it obviously takes it up to 100% complete. Labour report, really visible field, really good field to use. If you've added some photos, like I've just shown you before, or maybe there was a task list, maybe it was a PM. Again, I'll go into more detail on that in the next video. But you can actually put in those, see attached photos, something like that, or picture paints 1,000 words, obviously, so that's always a good thing. Or you can actually put in a brief description of what you want to do. Again, if you're on a handheld, so belt, join, repaired, also change some O-rings. I'll put that in. So be descriptive, but be quick and simple. So that's you don't want to write a full breakdown unless you need to, but you don't need to go into super detail. So the idea is to be in and out, not spend all day, typing in on the device or typing on a desktop. There are some options you can add as well, some default options, so you can see there completed, no issue found, problem resolved itself, see task document, see attachment for more details. So if you have added photos, so instead of typing it in, you can actually just click the drop down box, and then it'll add that in automatically for you. So there are some options to add in, but yeah, again, detailed but not overly detailed, but detailed to the point where the supervisor will understand what took place. So again, finding that balance, it's important as well as a supervisor that feedback's given to a technician if that balance isn't quite met. So if there's no detail in there at all, a lot of the time, then really, we want something in there. But again, we also don't want a long list of problems unless it is absolutely required. And if that is absolutely required, where it's a big downtime event and there's a lot of things that took place and a lot of hands on the job, that kind of thing. Sometimes that could be a PM maybe as well. Then I would probably recommend that you use the desktop version for that if that's needed, or try and take a lot of photos, that kind of thing. So, but using a mobile device could be, unless you're very good at that, it could be very difficult to enter a lot of detail. So use these drop down boxes, be precise, be accurate, but also be quick and efficient with it as well. Problem codes will take care of a lot of this as well. So you can see we've already had the problem. The problem was belt, but we've actually got the option for cause and remedy as well. So that will be this, and this is important that we add this for emergency, and that will take up a lot of the requirements of this labour report as well. So if we've got problem is belt, cause is let's put a cause, and again you can type this in if you know what it is, but I'm just showing you some of the options. So cause is let's say it's select one. We've got terminal, we've got tripped, we've got unknown, we've got worn and deteriorated. I'm going to select worn and deteriorated in this instance. The belt was worn, so you can see there. And remedy, again, So remedy would be repair, probably. So repair, repair. You've got replace, you've got realign. You can see some of the options you've got. So let's say we repaired the joint. So the supervisor, without even looking at the labour report, knows that we had a problem with this asset. We knew he knows it's, or she knows it's the belt. We know it was worn and deteriorated, and we know it's been repaired. So belt joint repaired. We also changed some O-rings, the attachment for more detail. We took a photo, maybe. That's as much as you'll ever need on a work order, emergency work order. That's as much detail. So then the final thing now is just your downtime, or the final two things. Downtime for emergency work orders is absolutely required. As soon as you put that EM as your work type, which we did before, we're looking for downtime. This is something we audit, this is something we look for. And it really can be as simple. The minimum requirement is just to put in, well, you can put minutes or hours. And I'm going to put minutes in this case. If it was hours, I could put in 0.5 for half an hour, or you can select minutes. So make sure that that's correctly selected. 30 minutes. Now, I said before, down hours is very different to labour hours. So labour hours, I put an hour. That includes attending, so you're still down at that point, but attending the job, repairing a job, but then obviously the job's been repaired. I've just watched it for a few minutes, just making sure everything's okay and the belt was aligned fine and not tracking over to one side. I was in a scissor lift. I've obviously drove the scissor lift back to the maintenance area where it's parked up, plugged the scissor lift back in, cleaned up, put my tools away that I no longer need, and then filled out this work order as well, even that process. So the whole thing took me an hour from start to finish, but the actual work was only down to let's say 40 minutes. And it took me 20 minutes then to finish everything up. So downtime 40 minutes, labour hours an hour. Two different things, two completely separate things. Shutdown date will default to that time. The minimum is we enter 40 minutes. And if you're entering the downtime straight after the job, then that is fine. So just put that in. We can put a reason in as well, but really we're using, if we've got problem codes, we've got a labour report, then we know what the reason is. But you are, if you need to add extra detail, again, find that balance, put that extra detail in if you need to. But the idea is to be quick as possible. We've already entered that detail there, and we've already put problem codes in. We've already got a job description. We don't need to put any more. We know what the issue was, and then you get the option to put your signature. I'm on a scratch pad here, so it's very difficult for me to put a signature in. Sign it off. Click save. Enter asset and service. Oh, sorry, yeah, I missed this out. So so date. I did briefly touch on that. So yeah, select the time. So let's say it went down at 9 a.m. On today's date. Click set. And then what do you say? So yeah, sorry. Put in the downtime. When that downtime event started, then put in how many minutes. Click save. Enter asset and service details, downtime and reason for shutdown. It is asking for a reason. So let's put that in. Belt, join, repaired. There we go. So it does require a quick reason. Click save. There we go. Work order done, work order completed. You can see the status is issue completed. And now it's available for review from the supervisor to make sure that we've got problem codes, make sure that we've got downtime included, make sure that the labour report is accurate, make sure that the hours make sense, all that kind of good stuff. And then the supervisor will close that off. And that data will be gathered. So it's as simple as that. Again, that is for an emergency work order. Lots of different ways to do a lot of different things. Well, that's typically the way I do it. The full system I explained before, exactly the same as what we've just shown, exactly the same things to press and click and add in. The standards are the same, just the user interface is a little bit different. I would recommend you use MC Express. Even if you're using a desktop, use MC Express for creating work orders. It's a lot simpler, a lot easier, and you get options on MC Express that you don't typically get on the desktop system. Like things like the timer, a lot easier to find parts, a lot easier to do global searches, that kind of thing. So MC Express is, and that's the reason I used it on this video, is by far the best system to use for creating work orders. Okay, next video I'll go into more creating filling out a PM or a follow-up work order that has been assigned to you. So it'll be very similar, but we've got a lot of crossover, but a few. Okay, thanks for watching the video. Catch you next time.